Remember those creepy chain emails from the early mid-2000s? I got one this morning. Update. Right now, I'm sitting in a police station. The sun's about an hour away from rising, but the sky outside is already bruised with pre-dawn gray. My hands are shaking slightly, and my mind is a fog of adrenaline and confusion. It's been hours since this all started, but it feels like a lifetime. These have been the most stressful hours of my life, and I'm not sure how much more I can take. It began with an email, not just any email, but one that felt like a relic from the early 2000s, the kind that claimed to be cursed or magical, demanding you forward it to 5 people or face some vague, terrifying consequence. Back then, we all got those chain emails, usually with flashy subject lines like, "Do not forward this email or you will die," or "The last person who opened this file was found in a drain." Most of us laughed them off, but a few of us, me included, used to wonder if they were real. This one was different. It arrived this morning, unassuming at first. No flashy subject line, no wild warnings. Just a simple message: "You've been chosen. Forward this to 5 people or suffer the consequences." Attached was a grainy photo of a woman standing in what looked like a dark alley. Her face was partially obscured by shadows, but her eyes were wide and pleading, like she was begging for help. I didn't think much of it at first, probably another hoax. But then something strange happened. By midday, the email had circulated through my contacts, and people started responding to me in panic. My friend Craig sent a text. "Bro, what's going on? Elisa just showed up at my door screaming about this email. She said she saw the same woman in her room last night." I laughed it off, but then Jackson, my old friend from middle school, sent me a message that chilled me to the bone. He said he'd sent the email to me, but not directly. Instead, he'd forwarded it through a dummy account, which had then bounced to my inbox. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he wrote. "But if you're reading this, I think something's wrong." That was hours ago. Now, I'm in the police station, trying to process what's happening. The cops spent nearly an hour in my apartment before coming back out. When they did, their skin was pale and their expressions were blank, detached, like they'd seen something that made them question reality itself. They told me there was somebody in my room. A woman. She was standing by the door in a way that I wouldn't have noticed upon first entering, wouldn't have noticed at all until I actually turned around to get into bed. So I asked them where she was now. They told me she was still there, still in my room. I had to process that for a moment. Then I asked why the hell they hadn't dragged her out. They glanced at each other, both looking uncomfortable before explaining they couldn't. As in, they physically couldn't. Even with tasers, nothing worked. She didn't react, as if she were a statue fixed in place. But they were absolutely sure she wasn't a statue. I shook my head and told them I wasn't following. Viana, the officer who'd come to my apartment first, was one of the bigger cops I'd ever seen. She could probably pick me up with one arm and toss me across a field. Yet here she was, visibly disturbed. She said they'd tried everything. Sedatives, chemicals, even brute force. Nothing budged her. I asked them what she looked like. They hesitated. "We're not sure you want to know," one of them said. "It might cause more distress." I told them to show me anyway. The image that flashed on the screen was a nightmare. It wasn't just the woman's appearance. It was the absence of anything human about her. Her face was gaunt, her skin mottled with bruises and cuts. A strong odor of sewage clung to her, as if she'd been left in some kind of filth for days. One arm was grotesquely bent at an unnatural angle, and her body was entirely naked. She stood frozen, her head tilted slightly, as though waiting for something or someone. In the back of my mind, I had already been anticipating it. But even with the evidence presented so clearly before me, a part of me refused to believe it. This couldn't be real. And yet, there she was, the same woman from the photo in the email. I showed them the email and explained everything. They asked questions, lots of them, but I could tell they weren't sure what to make of it either. It felt like we'd all stepped into some bizarre, surreal version of reality. They confirmed a few other details too. The woman's injuries were severe, but she wasn't moving or speaking. She just stood there, as if waiting for something. And then they called for backup. Viana drove me to the police station for my own safety, though I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more about containing the situation than protecting me. In the car, I asked her how they planned on dealing with this. What exactly were they going to do? She said she wasn't sure. There was no precedent for something like this. Her voice was tight, and she kept glancing at me in a way that made my stomach churn. Then she asked about Jackson Smith. I told her he was a friend from middle school. He sent the email, I added. She frowned, but didn't say much else. We reached the station, and I was led into an interrogation room. The first detective grilled me for what felt like hours. He asked me to recount my entire day. Whether I'd ever seen the woman before, if I'd heard anyone breaking in. He even implied I might be lying about the whole thing. "Is this a prank you're involved in?" he asked. "Did the email make her appear in your room?" It was obvious he wanted me to confirm one of two outcomes. Either I was mentally unstable, or I'd kidnapped the woman. But I couldn't give him what he wanted. I told him the truth, what had really happened. Eventually, his frustration boiled over. And he left the room. A second detective took over. His name was Brito, and he was different. He shook my hand and said he believed me. "You must have been terrified," he said. "I'm here to help." It was a refreshing change of pace, but I couldn't help but feel like they were playing good cop, bad cop. Why would I turn myself in if I'd done something? I asked him why he was so sure I was telling the truth. Normally, I wouldn't have been that bold with a cop. But I was starting to lose it. He smiled and said that years ago he'd gone through something that made him question his understanding of reality. "Now I'm more open-minded," he added. He then gave me an update on the woman. The entire building had been evacuated, and SWAT teams were on standby. She still hadn't moved or spoken. Every now and then, she'd turn her head or shift slightly, but always in the same spot by my door. The FBI was involved now too. I asked him to clarify what he meant about not being able to move her. He explained that they'd tried everything: physical force, chemicals, even sedatives. Nothing worked. She was resistant to anything they could legally use. And she wasn't aggressive, so they weren't sure how a bullet would affect her. One option they considered was cutting the floor out from beneath her and loading her into a truck. "That'd be annoying for you," Brito said dryly. I asked about Jackson. They were still searching for him. His vehicle had been spotted in several states, but no one had caught up yet. At that point, I was too exhausted to think clearly. I buried my face in my hands and screamed into them. Brito didn't react. Eventually, he let me go. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll talk more in the morning." I left the station, bought a 6-pack of beer, and checked into a motel. My body felt numb, but my mind was racing. I hadn't changed clothes in nearly 24 hours, and my skin stuck to my shirt like it was glued there. The alcohol helped dull the edges, but it didn't make things less real. I kept thinking about Elisa. Had she received the email too? What if something happened to her? I told Brito I wanted them to check on her, and he agreed. But in the meantime, I had no choice but to try to sleep. Before bed, I checked my email. Jackson had sent another one. This time, there was no subject line, just a message. "You think you're done with this, but you aren't. You think you've escaped her, but you haven't. You must pay. You must pay. If you do not forward this to 5 more people, the next time you take a shower, she will be in there with you. She will drag you down into something worse than hell, something worse than you can imagine. You will pay." I stared at it for a long time, my hands trembling. I don't know what to think anymore. The truth is, I don't want to think about anything at all, which is why I'm drinking. I know I shouldn't use it as an escape, but right now, It's the only thing that makes this feel less real. I sent a text to my boss. Can't come in tomorrow. Then I closed my eyes and tried not to think about what came next. Sleep well tonight. If you can, ring that notification bell so you never miss a nightmare.